welcome to another important edition of the Faultlines. I'm Ayodele Adio.
And I'm Confidence Macari.
Fantastic. A lot to unpack this week, but we'll start with the president's recent directive that came out yesterday afternoon.
That's President Tinubu.
President Tinubu, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
It's very important to be sure.
Because we have lots of presidents to talk about.
So President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, given the pressure he's been facing in the last couple of weeks from Donald Trump, internal pressure from opposition political parties, he's put out some sort of an agenda to say that, the military and the police are going to embark on a recruitment drive. The numbers I have seen are from 50,000 to 200,000 to sort of bluster, the security force within the country. He's talking about biting the bullet on open grazing, trying to nudge herders towards ranching, and some sort of a hint towards state policing. Absolutely. And that seems to be like the short-term plan to deal with the surge in security or in insecurity across the country. Now, before I get your thoughts, over the top of my head, I do not know that the answer to some of the security questions that confront us today is simply to just recruit 50,000 to 200,000, policemen or military men, because one of the problems that I believe we have faced over the years is the quality of our recruitment process. Now, it's funny, if you see how certain officers are recruited in certain parts, of the country. Sometimes it's funny, but there's usually the Senate list. There's a list for Obas, for emirs, and all sorts of things for people to get into.
The governor's list if you're going to study medicine also.
So, you don't really get the best hands or the best brains into our security architecture. And that obviously has shown in the way that we've gone about dealing with our national security challenges. So I'm not sure that simply recruiting 20,000, 50,000 people will change anything. It will put more numbers, more bodies, obviously. But I think that fundamentally, a few things perhaps need to change, starting from the curriculum at the training school, the capacity building process, how we train these men to respond to the kinds of challenges that we're currently facing. And I think that is critical. And obviously, we talk about motivation. How are we motivating these men to put their lives on the line, to defend the Nigerian state and the Nigerian people? Unfortunately, I just don't see the incentive for any policeman to put his life down for me or for you. And that's also being the problem because, rather than where you see, a lot of security men with valor and bravery confronting very difficult situations. What we have seen over time, especially from the police, is that the police would flee away from the first sight of danger, right?
You don't pay them enough.
Obviously, so
to not
you
run.
don't pay them enough not to run. And if they die, what's the condition of their family, right? And recently you saw the videos of retired policemen having spent 25 to 30 years, and they were getting 2 million naira. Some were getting 1.5 million naira. And, some were crying, some were frustrated and angry. So there isn't the incentive to lay their life down. And the final point I make before I pass the microphone to you is obviously on this open grazing thing. I wonder why that has been a difficult decision to take. Yes, people make the argument that, there are historical grazing routes that people have passed all the way from the Mauritania down into Nigeria and things like that. And while that argument is valid, that historically there's been a path where cattle has moved, across the Sahel, even feeding in down to Nigeria, I think because of the current challenge we're facing in the entire region, and not just particularly Nigeria, across the Sahel, I think it is common sense that one of the ways to even deal with the influx and the movement of these criminal elements is to first ban this open grazing thing. And that way, you can track the people who before now used the excuse of moving their cows into Nigeria and sneak in all sorts of arms and ammunitions and terrorists to come into the country. And obviously, there's this brilliant documentary by Al Jazeera that talks about the orphans of the Sahara. Many of these people who fought in the Libyan war and the Malian war, who have nothing to do. They typically were cattle rearers back in the day, and all they have now is a gun and perhaps an AK-47. And so, in that same disguise, they come into your country, and lay siege. So I just don't know why it's been a hot button, why it's been difficult to convince herders in Nigeria to go the Namibian way or the Brazilian way, into ranching that even gives them
American
better yield.
Ranch is a better
yes,
thing.
and productivity, and you make billions from the export of beef, and you have a lot more rich farmers across the country. But I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are about the new directive of the president.
Before we got on this show, I was reached out to by a journalist from the Associated Press wanting to know just how far enough these things go. And I have to be honest with you, when I heard the directive, I was like, nah. I was reading about the whole thing. I just did not know where to start replying the journalist from. Yeah, because I don't know how to put this without sounding critical, but I do think that Nigeria's political elites do not have its problem-solving skill. If you can give them credits for several things, politicking, knowing how to underwrite elections, getting into office, not necessarily winning elections, but problem solving is not some sort of a skill we have. Because if the Tinubu administration and the larger political elites know how to solve problems, they would come to understand, number one, appreciate the art of grand strategy. Grand strategy means applying the whole of states to achieve a national interest. So the question then becomes, what is Nigeria's national interest? Right now, the kind of things you're facing, I do know that this is a question that is usually asked during geopolitical issues, when you're the more technical issues, when you're addressing some academic concept like foreign policy and everything. But I do think that the kind of situation we're in now is a question we need to be asking ourselves as a people. What is the Nigerian national interest? Because you've said it during your monologue that some herders are unwilling to go into ranching and everything. Meanwhile, some people from the middle belt down geographically to the south, they are for open ranching. So there doesn't seem to be a consensus. Now, cycling back to what I was saying about the Nigerian interest and problem-solving skills, they have rightly identified the problem, that something needs to be done. That's a good step. But the thing is, how they're going about what needs to be done, it leaves a lot to be desired. I say this by saying that it's not enough for you to hire 20,000 people, 100,000 people into the police force or into the military. See, as a matter of fact, there is nobody in the Nigerian military, not this year, not last year, not in the past 10 years, that has come out to say that the military's problem is manpower. No, never. You understand? Each time the Nigerian army opens its short-term combatant calls, you will see thousands of people applying. Now, the problem with that short-term combatant calls is that certain regions simply do not give two hoots about it. Maybe the southeast, and then you have this drive by maybe the chief of the 82 division in Enugu going to convince people to go. But across different parts of the country, especially in the north, you always get people joining the army. But then I will also concede on the points that the police is understaffed, because this is something that they've been dealing with since the military made an incursion into politics in the 1960s. But the problem with Nigeria is not necessarily in the inadequacy of manpower. The problem with our security situation is the lack of consequences. Let me tell you what I mean. Before the Kebbi abduction happened, some 2-3 weeks ago, there was ample intelligence from the DSS given to the state government, given to the relevant security agencies in the state. This school, Government Girls Secondary School, Maga, is going to be attacked by bandits. The intelligence was received, and the Kebbi state government told the relevant security agencies, go and secure the school. They arrived quite all right. Did all of the drillings, trainings, told the girls how to, what to do in case of a kidnap. And then 30 minutes before the attack took place, the security forces withdrew. And the bandit had free will to attack the girls. The question is this the first time such a thing is happening in Nigeria?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. The Yelewata killings in Benue, the same thing happened. A month before, the DSS had information, gave to the Nigerian military, this is going to happen, yet it never happened. What was the excuse from the chief of defense staff? Oh, we had a false flag attack some villages away. The headers deceived us. How do you say that? How do you say that? You have intelligence from civilian agencies, you have military intelligence, yet civil headers are deceiving you. So the only reason why the chief of army staff the chief of defense staff as of then could say this is because he knows that there will be no consequences for that.
Exactly.
He knows.
Exactly.
Now, it doesn't stop the problem if you throw more budgets at it. What you simply do is you inflate the security budget. Since 2013, Nigeria's defense budget has taken the lion's share of allocation year on year. And one thing about Nigeria's corruption is security is a black hole. Once you throw money at it, there's no accountability there. So if you like, throw 1 million bodies at it. Yes, I understand that Nigeria is under police. Yes. The thing now is, the Tinubu government have to understand that, number one, there needs to be accountability within the system. I would say, to play the devil's advocate role, that leave all of these recruitments, leave all of this expansion, start making heads roll. If you're a DPO or if you're in charge of a platoon, there's stationed at a place, you've been given all of the resources to make sure that there is no security breach in the area. And if 1 week after you said you've carried out a successful operation, there's a security breach happening there, something has to be done about you. And why I say this is because we talk a lot about Kwara nowadays, because Kwara is the epicenter of some of the worst excesses of Al-Qaeda-affiliated groups, Ansaru, JNIM, and as well as Mahmuda. When this nonsense began there a couple of months ago in Kayama, close to the Kenji Lake area, the community people in Kayama local government, Barutin, Patigi, and the likes, they called the state government's attention. See, we don't know these people. They're attacking us. They're stealing cattle. They're killing people. They're kidnapping for ransom. Please help us. The state government talks to the Nigerian army. There's a military brigade in Ilorin, prevailed upon them. They actually went into those communities close to the boundary with Niger State, carried out an operation for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, they announced that they were done, and then they came back to Ilorin. It didn't take up to 3 days. Those same people that they said they've cleared in those forest areas returned with even more ferocity, started attacking even more communities. So before the attack, before the operation by the Nigerian army, they were attacking Kayama, Barutin, Patigi. After the attack, they now added Isin in Isanlu local government area and Ifelodun to their base of operations. So the question then becomes, what did you do?
And a question that continues to linger in my mind is, you talked about the fact that the police has systematically been underfunded since the military incursion into our politics. Why has that continued under civilian administration? Why have we not gotten to the point where we sort of better equip the police, improve their training? You see police stations in many of these communities that you talked about in Kwara State. They are basically non-existent. True. They can't respond to anything. Even if hunters were fighting, they don't have the capability to respond to hunters. And we're expecting those people to be the first line of defense to criminal elements who are well-equipped, well-resourced, well-motivated. I think we're living in fool's paradise. And that question continues to linger in my mind. Why has there been no attempt whatsoever and the political will to bring back the police to a point where they can truly be the first line of defense in our national security architecture? And it's just bizarre when you think about it most times that when you think about an attack, like you just rightfully said, they had to go to Ilorin to prevail on the Nigerian military to go all the way to respond. And if you check the amount of police checkpoints or the amount of police stations within that distance, it's astonishing that none of them have the capability.
There's a lot of
distance
because I was posted to Kwara for my NYSC, and the moment I left, because I used an Etisalat line as my main line then, the moment the bus left Ilorin and was going into Patigi, that Lafiagi Shari Road where the NYSC camp is, my Etisalat network got off. And that's how close that place was to Ilorin. It took us 3 hours to get there by road. Now, I cannot even begin to quantify the distance between Ilorin and Kayama communities. This is close to the boundary with Niger State. Understand? So that when you go in there, you see Jeba, you see many other desert places. You keep wondering, are you still in North Central? So the reason why, the answer to your question is, it's cultural. And I'll say this, you have a child, you have a baby girl. So if, when that baby girl was born, you've been feeding her sugar stuff all of the while, the day you choose to remove that sugar from her mouth and say, no, you must no longer eat sugar for morning, afternoon, and night, or breakfast, lunch, and dinner, what happens? It turns to a fight.
Exactly.
She'll fight you. You to take a lot for you to, not even for her to, it will take a lot mentally and psychologically for you to be able to force yourself to say, no, you have to stop eating that sugar. How does this relate to the Nigerian situation? The military was first introduced into Nigerian politics in terms of security duties, domestic security duties with the TV riots of the 1960s. Then the Balewa government saw the agitation for TVs in what used to be known as the Northern Region for a separation from the native authority system. And so the Northern People's Congress wasn't going to have it because they had this one North policy. So you have a Middle Belt and community coming to say that no, we don't want to be under the North again. It was a problem. So they had to riot. So the military was brought in to quell those riots, to take them up for 4 years. And crazy thing is an anecdote. One of the people, I think that was Major Tim Onategu, who was part of the people who put down the TV riots, went on to lead the General Renaissance Sissoko, but I digress. After that particular episode, every single thing since then, every single Nigerian ruling elite since then, have decided to make this short-term, quick gain stuff, where instead of appointing the police or tapping the police to lead stuff, the military comes in, use force, settles everything, and goes away. You understand? So that has become a staple. Now, why I say this is a culture, it's just like the baby that has been used to sugar all the while. We've been used to short-term benefits, short-term deals, kicking the can down the road. You have an armed robbery in this place, bring in the soldiers. You have a kidnapping, bring in the soldiers. You have oil bunkering, bring in the soldiers. Of course, the soldiers, they'll come, they'll shoot. Because the Nigerian elite, the Nigerian people fear power. They only respect power. You understand? This is something that the average armed terrorist group in Nigeria, whether a terrorist group or just an armed agitator, has understand that you cannot sit on the negotiation table with the Nigerian government without arms. You have to take up arms before the Nigerian government will listen to you. So they understand this, the elite understand it, the people understand this. So this is why they will bring in the soldiers, because they know that Nigerians only respond to violence. But they do not understand that the violence is only making things worse. Not that they do not understand, they don't care. So instead of you to equip the police, where the police will be able to handle this thing, because when the police handles it, it is likely going to take a longer time. It's procedural. Yeah. It takes process because you go and log a complaint, you do investigations. The military doesn't do investigations. The military does not have enough resources to take you to court and say, this person did this. Even if the military arrests a terrorist today, it's more likely that they will hand them over to the DSS or they kill them or they detain them. They don't have that capacity. But the entire long process is not something that the military is equipped for. But that short-term deal, that short-term gain is what we've been so used to as a people. Yeah. So every successive government sees a problem and say, bring in the military. And so it's something the military themselves have been complaining about.
Yeah, you make a great point, and they're overstretched across the country.
They themselves have been complaining about it.
Confidence, because we're pressed for time. Yeah. There's another burning issue in Tanzania. Yeah. Julius Nyere's beautiful bride. The president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, from the ruling party of the CCM, seemed to have laid siege on our own people. Opposition political parties claim that, the killings from the fallout of the riots and the protests have claimed over 700 lives. Yeah. Of course, certain people dispute those figures, but because they haven't allowed journalists, free access into the country, they have shut down the internet, it's difficult to verify many of these claims. But what we certainly know is that people have been killed, by police or by military men who have used live rounds on unarmed citizens. But where I'm actually going with this conversation is that this entire breakdown happened largely because the leading opposition figures were not allowed to be on the ballot, which obviously led to a situation where she claims to have gotten 98% of the entire vote. I'm not sure that if I ran an election in my own house that I was going to get 98%. But, I mean, she gets 98% of the vote and riot breaks out. Right?
Yeah, you can count on your wife to vote for you. I don't know about your children. Your wife will vote for you.
You have all sorts of riots across the country. People are dying. And over the top of my head, I'm here wondering, when do we learn our lessons in Africa? When do we learn our lessons of, if you want to practice democracy, you create an open political system where people have the rights to pursue their aspiration. Opposition political parties are allowed to field candidates, and you should make the process free and fair. But we just don't seem to learn these hard lessons. We'll rather preside or rule over ashes and graveyards, than stand a chance of losing an election. I don't know what your thoughts are from the fallout of what's happening in Tanzania over the last couple of days.
Yeah, I don't know where I heard this quote from some time ago. Somebody said, power is a stick. If you put it down, somebody else will pick it up and then they will hit you on your head with it. The average African politician understands this. You could say it's a cultural thing. I like to say that many things are institutional, many things are cultural, because what a society rewards becomes its culture. You get it? So many countries across the region, they've had this thing. And it's the issue of lack of consequences. A couple of days ago, there were a couple of countries. I'm trying to remember now one of the countries where they sentenced their president. I think it was Bangladesh. Yeah, Sheikh Hasina was sentenced to death in absentia. We've also had one other country that have sentenced their own president, ex-president, to death or something. And Nicolas Sarkozy was sentenced to jail for accepting money from Gaddafi for his election in 2009.
Bolsonaro has been sentenced to 20 years in prison.
It is very unlikely.
Brazil.
Very, very unlikely for you to have this kind of a thing in Africa. In fact, it is crazy for you to have a Nigerian head of state come to defend himself in courts after he leaves office, because they see themselves as untouchable. So this kind of thinking has been permeated into governance and everything. And it's quite tragic with what's happening in Tanzania, because this is the country of Julius Nyerere. You know, it is one of these countries that have never experienced a coup d'etat since its history. But it gets worse, because I do think I fear for Tanzania, because the person Samia Suluhu Hassan took over from was one of the worst despots in East Africa. Of course, it is a region where you have the guy in Uganda, Museveni, you have his protege just across the border in Paul Kagame. It's a region of strong men, and then there comes a strong man wannabe in Tanzania, and who mercifully got struck down by COVID in 2021, and he died. And people expected his deputy to be a little more flexible. And she started out well. There's some of his policies, draconian policies, she reversed. But I do think that there seems to be a gap between that honeymoon period and the period leading up to her election. And she just suddenly flipped. I'm still trying to put my hand on exactly what made her flip, but the change was very, very palpable. And where we noticed that this was going to be a problem, especially with regards to the election, was when in the lead up to the election, we had Kenyan and Ugandan activists. I think Boniface Mwangi is a very popular guy in Kenya. He went to Tanzania to give a talk and he was arrested. There was also a Ugandan activist, Agatha Atuhaire, also arrested and everything. That's when most people in the international scene, especially across the region, sort of knew and understand that this is the thing that is going on in Tanzania, and it's going to be a problem. I was looking at Freedom House statistics for the region, because it was part of a research I was working on, which I think is going to be out next week. And I was shocked when I saw the figure for Tanzania. I was seeing 31 over 100. Well, that's not free. That's a ranking. Yeah. When you have to get to 51% for you to get partly free. Yeah. So Tanzania doesn't even make it up to 51% now. And I was shocked. But I shouldn't be shocked, because, like I said, this is something that's been going on since 2015.
Yeah. I mean, she's been edging and flirting with totalitarianism. Yeah. And I'm here wondering, do you fear that they potentially might be risking a coup in Tanzania?
Potentially. I think it is less likely compared. I'm going to do a comparative analysis. So if Tanzania was in West Africa, I would have said yes. If it was in Southern Africa, I would have said, quite likely, because we've seen what happened in Madagascar. Yeah. And a coup is a contagion.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's just like a virus. It spreads like air. And the fact that Tanzania is not on the Sahel. The Sahel runs from about Mauritania down to Ethiopia.
It has good siblings and good neighbors.
So their entire distance is just simply not. So below it. So why I would say that in the near to medium term, it is not risking a coup, is because, again, the geographical bent, its neighborhood is made up of strong men. Exactly. So she's a strong woman in the neighborhood of strong men. So it is more likely for it to be in the same way. And for you to carry out a coup successfully, you have to have a history, an institutional memory of carrying out a coup. Yes. Tanzania has never had a coup before. I think before this election thing happened, the greatest the most significant political unrest they have had was before Tanzania was formed. Before it used to be the Tanganyika, Zanzibar and Tanganyika came together. The island nation of Zanzibar had some sort of a political uprising after their independence in 1963, I think. And then the Africans and the Arabs, they had some sort of a problem and they couldn't defend themselves very well. So they went into this merger with Julius Nyerere, and that's how the United Republic of Tanzania was formed. Yeah. So that has been the biggest unrest. So it has been a very stable.
Which was why even when Nyerere became president of the new country, he formed a one-party system because he was afraid that multi-party democracy would lead to ethnic
very
tensions.
Communist, very communist. That's what they do.
Tensions and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Talking about coups and institutional memory, one country that has a memory of coup planning.
9 since 1974. Very prolific.
Bissau, right? So they have serious institutional memory of carrying coups. In fact, one had happened recently as 2023, but of course it failed. A few of the presidential guards were killed.
Matter of fact, one was supposed to happen before the election, a month before the election.
Exactly. So it's just been lurking around the corner, and it's just found the perfect time for some sort of expression. But I have tried to follow reports on the ground in the country to see how this coup is popular or not with the people. And there's a bit of an indifference, from the reports that I'm seeing. People aren't really excited. Neither are they really, disappointed.
You see it as elite in fighting.
Exactly. Yeah. So, there's, one thing many people don't know is that recently the country has had a very notorious reputation for being
a narco state.
Exactly, for being a narco state, drug pushing and all sorts of corruption, with the political elite and things like that. And it reminds me of there's this interesting book, by I think it's John Robinson. I'm trying to remember his name. Titled The Traveling Economist, where he argued that one of the reasons why African countries are sort of trapped in poverty and will struggle to develop, which will make us vulnerable to coups, was the fact that adult literacy was below 70 to 80% of the adult population. The cost of electricity was beyond the reach of most of the population. And of course, high birth rates per woman, which he pegged at about 6 children per woman. And countries that do below these numbers, which means you can get your literacy levels above 80%, which means you can make electricity affordable and accessible. And obviously, you can reduce the childbirth per woman to 1 or 2. You're likely to escape the poverty trap, and you're less likely to find your country in a coup. Guinea-Bissau is a proper prototype of struggling to meet that numbers in adult literacy rates.
One of the poorest countries in the world.
One of the poorest countries in the world.
$800 per GDP per capita.
Oh dear. And so on the one hand, you're not surprised that given the level of corruption and given the weakness of state institutions in that country, that a coup has struck again. But the $1 million question here is this going to be a continuous vicious cycle where the coupists come into power, promise that they are going to stabilize the country, make it better for the common man. They also fall into that state of quagmire. They can't make any progress whatsoever. And then it just becomes a vicious circle of unending political instability, poverty, impoverishment. How do they break out of this cycle? And, you talked about contagion earlier. There's already a contagion on the Sahel belt. Where, about 5 countries have already fallen. How afraid are you that this contagion is going to spread across the continent?
Across the continent? Well, not necessarily, not really. In 2020, when the latest Mali coup at the time happened, I remember publishing this piece in some major Nigerian newspapers, and I got some backlash for it. The title of the piece was, I think, Mali's coup, ECOWAS golden era finally comes to an end. And then some people on Twitter saw it and like, what do you mean golden era? Where did ECOWAS, when did West Africa ever get? Okay, no, it was West Africa's golden era comes in. And like, when did West Africa ever get a golden era? And they didn't read this stuff, like normal people that were attacking on social media, they never go beyond the headlines, But the crux of my argument then was that what we're seeing now is what we used to see in the 1980s and the 1990s. You understand? But from when the Darfur War, the Darfur crisis in Sudan, sort of picked up in 2003, 2004, at the time, that was when many conflicts across the continent, the wars of independence, secession, military coups, they were dying out. You could remember what happened in Liberia and Sierra Leone at the time. So it sort of gave us a decade of relative peace where there were lots of talks about Africa rising. In fact, that was the same period that NEPAD, New Partnership for Africa Development, AU came up, and there was lots of, Nigeria went through elections. We had back-to-back, civilian transfer, so many things like that. But all of these things changed when Mali School Festival happened in 2012, and then we now had homegrown terrorism in Nigeria that we now started exporting to not just the Lake Chad Basin, but across the region. So the failure to consolidate these gains made in that place of relative stability, that time of relative stability now started reenacting old habits. So in a way, we have a population that is so young on the continent. I think the median age for the continent is about 18.1, that many of them they didn't live through the 1990s. They didn't live through the War of Independence. They didn't live via all of the coups. And look, I was a baby when Abacha died. You understand? But there's one thing I've come to realize is that not just that people in my generation do not read, is that they're impatient. You understand? I know how much when I was an undergraduate, I spent time convincing my colleagues that a military coup is not the best thing for Nigeria. They keep shouting revolution, and many of them are very drawn to Sowore, and
you're gonna get flagged for that.
they are very drawn to it. They're like, if Nigeria needs a coup, we need a strong one and everything. That's how we got Buhari in 2015. Why am I saying all of these things? The reason I say this is, yes, on one hand, I do not fear for a coup contagion for the continent. As long as you're not on the coup belt, as long as you're not in West Africa, I'm going to worry more for you if you're in North Africa or if you're in West Africa than if you're in South Africa or East Africa. And one of the reasons why I would worry for you if you're in the place where you call the coup belt is that we have a lot of young people who have never really tasted good governance since they were born. Yes, we could say that the worst of the continent before the golden era ended at the start of the century. Yeah. But when each century started, a lot of these were very young. You understand? They didn't remember anything. In fact, one of my earliest memory was the 2003 elections in Nigeria. But then I was well read enough. I was more interested in knowing about my country's history, so I knew what exactly happened in the intervening years. Many of them don't know, So I would not. It would underwrite my education for me to come out to say what we need is a military coup. This is not me being condescending, but this same thing that I'm talking about that you would find from people in my age grade is the same thing that led to people cheering on the coup in Mali in 2020. Yeah. So it's the same thing that you see for people cheering on the coup in Niger in 2023. Yeah. So this is why I do think that it's a contagion.
Nigeria is seated squarely in the middle of that belt. Yeah. And if reports are true, we just escaped one a couple of months ago. Yeah. Just as we're rounding up, do you worry because the conditions upon which have led to coups in many of these countries, whether it's Gabon, Mali, Niger, are very much present in Nigeria today? And a lot of people are losing hope, not just in the institutions of this country, but even in human relations within the country, which means have not seen this in a long time, the amount of hatred amongst young people from other tribes. Yeah. It's raw, it's nervy.
And it's stoked.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they have this thing called Tribalismo Thursday on Twitter.
I worry for what could become of us, right? Being right in the middle of this so-called Sahelian coup belt. And the fact that every other month, there's an announcement of a new terrorist group operating in some parts of Nigeria.
Terrorism startups.
Exactly. It's just like the country has become an ecosystem that is funding terrorist startups across the country. But I mean, to round up, how do we ensure that we do not become another Mali, another Niger, another Gabon, or another Burkina Faso?
Yeah, so I'll say three things. Number one, like you said, all of the ingredients to make a coup possible in Nigeria is present today, and I also add the geopolitical factor into it. So I don't want to sound. There's a way I'm going to sound. There's a way I'm going to say this. That I hope I don't sound biased towards the West, but each time you see some sort of a hostile government takeover, an attempted one or something, across the region, there's always the Russian hand. If there's not a Russian hand, there's the Emirati hand, playing it and all of that. Or at the very least, if not one of those two, there's the Turkish, elements waiting in the wings to step in and everything. So some of the, the arguments and the conversations online, we've seen some sort of instigations from troll factories, troll bots and everything, and has mostly led to propaganda from some other countries, seeing how, flashes of what the guy in Burkina Faso is doing, and then they want the same thing for their country. Yeah. So if you notice during the 2024 End Bad Governance protest, one of the reasons why Tinubu fired intelligence chiefs was during the protest in Kano, a Russian flag suddenly showed up from nowhere, and then they had to go arrest the tiller and everything. So from Tinubu's own assessment was that the Russians were carrying out an influence peddling campaign in the country, and the intelligence services could not preempt it. So in that particular regard, if you factor in all of the insecurity, discontent with the government, divisions, social divisions, economic inequality and everything, yes, the society is ripe for a coup. But the reason why I don't think it is possible is down to the concept of enlightened self-interest. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So most people don't know that the reason why it's impossible to stage a coup, or the reason why it was possible to stage a coup in the 1990s in Nigeria, was that we basically had only 3 army divisions. Let's be honest, anybody that wants to stage a coup today is not coming from the Air Force. It's not coming from the Nigerian Navy. It's going to come from the Army. Yeah. They are the most equipped, they're most funded, and the most prominent of the armed forces. The reason why it was possible in the 1990s and 1960s to do so was we had, number one, only 3 army divisions. The first division in Kaduna, the one in Ibadan, and then you now have, I think, the one in Enugu, the second division. So all you just needed to do was control those 3 divisions. It was
control 2 out of the 3.
Yeah, control 2, and you're good. And then you only had Radio Nigeria as if you control Radio Nigeria, you're also good. But since 1999, that has been impossible. And the reason it has been impossible is because when Obasanjo became president, he did this thing where he decentralized the army command. So 1999, we had 3 army divisions. Right now, guess how many we have? We have 8. Even Sokoto has 1, Port Harcourt has 1, Maiduguri has 1, and everything. So it is an uphill battle to control all 8 divisions. It's not something you want. And then there's also social media. You cannot control the information flow, because we saw what happened in Turkey in 2016. Erdogan was saved by FaceTime. You understand? So democratization of information has made it very, very hard for you to successfully conduct a coup. That is not to say that somebody will not get ideas. Somebody might try, and I'm not saying that it's not going to be successful, but I'm saying that the chances of it succeeding is extremely lower than it was in the 1990s. Yeah. So, which brings me back to...
the last successful coup was 85.
So another reason why it is unlikely to succeed is because, every military in the world has its own intelligence service. Yeah. You understand? In Nigeria, we have the Director of Military Intelligence, now known as the Defense Intelligence Agency. Ostensibly, that particular agency was created in the 1980s under Babangida as part of his security restructuring from the NSO to sort of be the military's own intelligence service for military operations. But in reality, that's not what it was supposed to do. That was not what it was designed to do. It was actually designed to spy on the army themselves and the general military. So if you are planning a coup in the Army, in the Air Force, in the Navy, they will pick you up. That's exactly what they did. And to tell you how I know this, if you look at the coup thing, when it happened, the week later, Tinubu changed the service chiefs. He changed everybody, elevated the Army chief down to the Chief of Defense Staff role, but he left one person in office, the Defense Intelligence Agency chief. That was some sort of like a job well done and everything. So as long as that agency is there, it is very, very hard. Now, as to I seem to have forgotten the other question you asked.
Yeah, but unfortunately we're out of time, so I'll just leave you with the last 30 seconds.
Yeah.
President's going to appoint 3 ambassadors. 2 of them are former intelligence chief. Master stroke, or we're just being overly excited? Why are we sending intelligence trained diplomats who are most likely going to lead our diplomatic efforts in the United States and perhaps
so I think the most logical conclusion I'll get for this is 2 out of the 3 are career diplomats, and many of them. Wale Oke was the former NIA chief, and NIA is the country's civilian external intelligence agency. So that sort of role comes with a lot of liaison with foreign intelligence agencies. Think Mossad, CIA, MI6, the Pakistani ISI and the like. So given that the most pressing geopolitical issue Tinubu is facing is not necessarily Russian incursion into Nigeria's borders, as I've written last month, but the arguments about Christian genocide in Nigeria, which has been a thing for the last 1 year and only became even more pressing since Trump decided to redesignate Nigeria as a country of particular concern. So it's much more better for you to have career diplomats who already have this sort of contacts within the broad international system to be dealing with this. But then the question then becomes, this is a specific problem. It's a general problem rather, but it's been driven by one specific source, the United States. So I would worry if the particular people is appointed to that specific role in Washington are people that can be able to not take on the US, but take on the Trump administration. The Trump administration is a different kind of administration from what we had.
It's a different kind of animal.
yeah, it has. Because the kind of people that you're dealing with, the evangelicals in the US government, are not the type that are taking information from what the Nigerians to tell them. They have contacts on the ground. This is very, very important to them because it is on the back of which they want to run for president in 2028. So their base will eat it up. So whatever you're telling them and their base is getting a different information, you're wasting your time.
Confidence, we're out of time. Next time we sit together, we're going to talk about unfolding events in Mali. There's now a rebel group that are pushing, towards the state capital.
I cannot keep up, man.
We'll talk about Imran Khan. And we sort of
almost dead guy.
Exactly. So it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do this again sometime.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah.
Cheers,
man.